All right. And we are recording this session, so for those of you who have to leave early or want to check in later, we will be adding it to our website. You should be able to get to the link from the CHCI website, as well as our YouTube channel that will be coming usually within a day or two. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. This is a session that we thought was really important to do because I think as an organization, we've seen so many people through the years kind of come to us and say, your program sounds cool, but this doesn't sound like something I should do because I'm an engineer, or I'm planning to go to med school, or I'm going to be a scientist, or I'm going to work in energy. And it couldn't be further from the truth. So we're excited to have you here tonight, hear a little bit about CHCI, but mostly hear from our fabulous alumni and learn more about their experiences and how having public policy experience can really be beneficial to your career path. So we'll get started. We'll start with a couple quick introductions of the CHCI team that's here. Talk, like I said, a little bit about why Capitol Hill desperately needs more STEM expertise. Share some opportunities for you to come to DC with CHCI or be virtual with CHCI, as we currently all are. And then we'll get to the good stuff. We have a fabulous panel of alumni here with us that we will we'll let them give us all the good information. So really quickly, Yvette, do you want to introduce yourself?
I can. Good evening or good afternoon for some of you that are on the West Coast. So my name is Yvette Maldonado. I'm the Human Resources Director at CHCI. I guess interestingly, as Marie tends to remind me, I'm one of those odd cases where I've taken my STEM degree and have geared off to do something totally different, but has helped along the way as well. So even though I'm in human resources, I actually studied computer systems engineering and did quite a bit of engineering for a while, but really loved the people portion of what I was doing and decided to take all of those skills and channel them towards management and HR. So I'm here to hopefully try to piece all that. How does that make sense in a DC congressional environment?
She sells herself short. She understands a lot of things that I don't understand. So we appreciate having you here, Yvette. And I'm Marie Cho. I'm Vice President of Programs at CHCI. I've been at the organization for 10 years now, which is a long time. Background is in education. So I work with all of our program participants, our interns, fellows, and our high school program. So I'll be here to answer the more programmatic questions that might come up. So really quickly, to give you a little bit of history of CHCI, I love this picture. This is, I believe, the very first cohort of fellows that we ever had back in '82. It's probably, they're all probably fashionable again now because everything comes back around. But we were founded in 1978 by 3 Latino members of Congress who really saw the need to diversify Congress, not just in terms of the folks who were elected, but the people who work there, right? The folks who are working for the members, communicating on behalf of the members, making public policy happen. And so we were founded with the mission of developing the next generation of Latino leaders. And we have been doing that since that first cohort of fellows in '82, and have now expanded far beyond just 4 fellows a year. We have 4 signature programs that we now do, all based here in Washington, DC. Our R2L Next Gen program, which is a high school leadership program, where we bring students to DC for 1 week in the summer, which is a ton of fun. Our Congressional Internship program, which brings interns who are current college students to Washington, DC for a semester-long experience on Capitol Hill. And our Public Policy and Graduate Fellowship programs, which are longer experiences, more in-depth experiences for folks who've already completed their undergraduate or their graduate degrees. So that's a real quick overview of what it is we do as an organization. We also, of course, have lots of very interesting and engaging policy events. So particularly of note to this audience, we have our 2-day coming November Tech Summit coming up in December, all of which will be free for you to register. Didn't share that information here just yet because we just are getting prepared to launch registration, but certainly when we follow up on this email, we'll make sure to share that registration information if it becomes available. So really quickly, just out of curiosity to see who's here, I've got 2 quick poll questions. If everyone could quickly just answer what your academic level is and what, curious to also know what your STEM area of interest is. And we kind of categorize these a little bit to make things easier. All right. Health and engineering. All right, that seems to be the focus tonight. Excellent. So we've got, if you can, I'm not sure if I'm sharing the results or if you can see the results or not. This is my first time with the poll. We've got a couple freshmen, sophomores, seniors in college, some recent college graduates, and predominantly folks either in the health or engineering fields. So that's great to know as we keep going. Oh, I think I can actually, there we go. So that's helpful for us to know as we guide this conversation, but always love to hear what people are interested in and kind of tailor it to that. So Yvette, I will hand it over to you.
Okay. So you may, most of you I'm sure are here because you're probably wondering, so what on earth can I do in Congress with a STEM degree or with a STEM focus? So interestingly enough, there's quite a range that you can actually apply to based on your areas of interest is really what it amounts to, right? So as STEM students, there's quite a bit of skills that I see in many of the people that I recruit, that I interview, that I talk with, that are very applicable to the needs that we have in Congress today. So I can quickly think of like your analytical skills, your problem solving skills, the way that a lot of STEM classes are project-based, the way that you do research, the way that you analyze your data, and just in general, how you can take really specific tasks and make sure that that's implemented and that you take into consideration the full design cycle, right? So everything from taking the initial problem of what on earth is going on and what am I trying to solve, whether that's from a legislation perspective or whether that's from a general public perspective, run it literally through the design cycle to make sure that all requirements, that all things are being considered when at the end of the day you come up with a solution that the general public is going to literally digest, right? So I think today in Congress, there are many decisions that unfortunately are occurring that don't really run through that whole process, right? So you look at what are the needs of the country, and then we come to quick solutions without really looking at all that's considered. And I think that many of you having those STEM skills really lend itself really well to make sure that you're in the conversations, that you're in the rooms that are considering all the things, right? All the aspects, that you're bringing that additional perspective into what could be an okay solution versus a really well thought out, really good solution, like I said, for the general public. So just some of the examples that we have here to kind of bring a little bit to home here. So I know that many of you have probably seen, whether on the news or in congressional hearings, when we've seen most recently several of the top technology companies, CEOs that were testifying in front of Congress. Just the congressmen and women's ability to ask the right questions, the intelligent questions. There's generally teams of people that are behind our congressmen and women that are doing the research and making sure that they understand the general concept so that they can make intelligent questions, so that they can ask the appropriate things, again, that are going to affect all of our nation. Well, like I said, there's teams of people behind our congressmen and women, and that's a good example of what CHCI will help you do, which is become a part of that team that help our congressmen and women make those be able to ask and investigate the appropriate things so that they can make intelligent decisions for their constituents. So other than for example, the Google CEO and one of our congressmen asking if Google makes iPhones. I mean, we all, haha, there's, I'm sure, memes and all that about that on social media, but I'll bring it back to what's going on today, and more importantly, and how the decisions that are being made and how our STEM skills can kind of help with what's going on with our current situation with COVID today. Something as simple as the big problem that we have and have had with logistics, right? Just getting the right equipment to the right people at the right time. Logistics, for example, to me is a clear indication of where we can apply industrial engineering skills, right? And in many of our engineering, like I said, processes that can help towards that. Of course, the EPA and the good bulk of what they do is environmentally focused. I can go on and on about the list of different technology situations where any of your engineering degrees can be applicable, right? Whether that's websites to making things efficient, to making sure that things are well received. All these things are different areas that you can apply any of your interests to what's going on in Congress and to what's going on in any of your states, right? So I would encourage all of you to kind of think about what are your areas that you really like within your majors, and then kind of figure out how you can apply that to any of the areas that that can be applied in Congress, right? And if at the end of the day you come through our program and you're interested, and I think some of our panelists will talk about this as well, you don't have to come through the program with the mindset of I want to permanently work on the Hill, or that's what I want to do as a career. You can actually use this experience to gain some of the knowledge of how regulations are done, how standards are applied, and then take it back to the private sector or take it back to academia or different areas where all of the legislation that occurs actually affects what the rest of the nation is doing. So it's kind of a snapshot from my perspective of how the skills kind of can merge together.
Probably could have progressed through the slides there while you were talking as you moved on. Sorry about that. But yes, absolutely to all of what Yvette shared. Sorry. And so what I wanted to talk about a little bit about that we hear all the time is, this sounds great, but I don't know anything about public policy, so surely CHCI does not want me to come do their program. Not true. That is actually what we are here for. That's what we do. Our programs are really designed to make sure that folks have the hands-on experience and training that they need to be successful on the Hill. Whether that's understanding the basics of public policy, we've got a great partnership that we've started the past couple of years with the George Washington University Trachtenberg School of Public Policy, where we actually do graduate level public policy courses as part of weekly programming with our fellows and interns. We bring in different experts who are working in these fields, and you'll find that many times some of the folks who are really leading the charge in policy work are actual former practitioners from the healthcare field, or sometimes in the healthcare field actually still actively working. It's always alarming to me, because I don't come from a health background, how many people work in policy Monday through Friday and then moonlight on the weekends in the ER or in the emergency room or or the operating room or whatever. You'll also see that there's a lot of scientists who are called upon very frequently to help with this stuff. So those are the folks that we try to bring in when we're talking about different policy topics in different areas where you can focus, to really give you that hands-on experience, not only in our programming that we do, but also in your placement. And I think many of our interns and fellows find pretty quickly that their placement offices are like, yeah, it's fine. You don't need to worry about that. Help me understand what's happening here with this particular thing. And we'll talk about that a little bit here in just a minute. So just to really quickly ground us a little bit in what CHCI does before we talk about this, since everyone joining us today is an alumni of one of these programs. The two programs that we're talking about today are our Congressional Internship Program and our Fellowship Programs. So I mentioned before, our Congressional Internship Program is for current undergrads or folks who just graduated. We actually just changed this. So if you are, for example, graduating in December, you'd be eligible to do the spring program or the semester immediately following. It's a 12-week program in the fall or spring and 10 weeks in the summer. There are weekly leadership and public policy development classes that you'll take part in. And then the other 4 days a week you will spend placed in the office of a member of Congress. And the great thing about all of CHCI programs is that we understand that a barrier to entry for so many people on Capitol Hill, and probably for everyone on this call, is none of us could afford to just go unpaid and live on someone's couch for an entire semester here in DC. And so we ensure that all of our participants have the opportunity to get paid, to get health insurance. For interns, we provide housing. We provide transportation to and from DC, and then also provide some support towards monthly Metro expenses. Metro is our public transportation system here in DC, which could also use some work. So any urban planners out there, we could use you for that too. And then our public policy and graduate fellowship programs are similar to the internship program in that they are focused on 1 day a week of programming and training and 4 days a week in a placement, but it's it's longer and it's more in depth. So it's a 9-month experience. Folks either have the opportunity to be placed on the Hill for the full, in one spot for the full 9 months, or to do 2 separate placements where they get to experience an off-Hill placement and an on-Hill placement. Because as we all know, public policy doesn't just come from the members of Congress, it also comes from think tanks and research organizations and nonprofits and corporations. And again, also a paid experience. We don't provide housing. The fellows don't want to live dorm style. We can't quite convince them, but we do provide them a higher pay rate commensurate with an entry-level Hill staff position, health insurance, transportation to and from DC, monthly Metro stipend, and lots and lots of training and experiences. And so those programs are open to folks who have finished their undergraduate degree within the past 3 years or their graduate degree within the past 2 years. So that's just a quick overview of what the programs are, so that way as you hear our alumni talking about these programs, you kind of can put some context to it. And hopefully we will see an application from some of you for some of these programs. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our fantastic panel who are with us tonight. We've got Elizabeth Alvarez, who was a 2018-2019 graduate health fellow placed in the office of Senator Kamala Harris. You may know her as potential VP Kamala Harris. She's currently a medical student at UC Davis and on the executive board for the National Latino Medical Student Association. So thank you, Elizabeth, for being here. Good to see you. Dominic Ochoa was a spring 2018 congressional intern who was placed in the office of Congressman Joaquin Castro. And he currently works as a data analyst for the Texas Democratic Party for the US Senate. So welcome, Dominic. Thanks for being here. And last but not least, Dr. Gabriela Sosa, who was a 2015-16 graduate fellow placed with the US House Committee on Natural Resources, currently working at the Texas Water Resources Institute. So we've got a little science, little engineering, little health to kind of cover all of our bases. And we're excited to have all of you here today. So I'm going to, with that, hand it over to Yvette, and we can start the conversation. And just so folks know, as you're participating, there is a chat function. There's also a Q&A function. So feel free as we go through this. We've got some questions to get us started, but if you've got questions for any of our panelists or CHCI, just drop them in the chat or in the question and answer box. All right. Yvette, are you good? Uh-oh, we might have a technical difficulty. Let me see if I can pull up the questions to ask. One second. Sorry about that. All right, so while Yvette works on that, I can ask the first question to get us started. So if each of you could talk a little bit just quickly about how your program experience impacted your professional journey. And actually, if you want to start by doing a little quick introduction, probably even better, of kind of where you are and what you're doing right now, other than my fast one, and then kind of talk about how CHCI helped you get to where you are. That would be great. Sorry, you can tell I was not the one who was getting ready to moderate. We can start with Elizabeth. Why don't you go first?
Thanks, Marie. So hello, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Alvarez. I was placed in the office of Senator Kamala Harris, and that was like the most intense learning experience. So within the office of Senator Kamala Harris, my portfolio was health, education, environmental justice, and social welfare, except for SNAP programs. And that was like such an invaluable experience because I was able to see all these numerous issues with a public health background at the time, but also it allowed me to meet with a lot of special disease focus groups, physicians who were lobbying on behalf of their communities. I'm originally from California, so it was just nice to see all of that advocacy for back home. And so I knew after that experience that I wanted to pursue med school. So after leaving CHCI, I went back home and I studied for my MCAT. I was actually really fortunate enough that when I took my MCAT in DC, the Harris office, we went karaokeing afterwards. They're very supportive. So that was nice. And while I was applying for medical school, I was working at the Terasaki Research Institute, so working on kidney transplant disparities, which you might think, like, how did you go from the Hill to working on kidney transplant research? But you learn very quickly that on the Hill, you have to take a lot of information, distill it very fast, and make it approachable for the everyday lawyer or consumer. So that was something similar that I did at the Terasaki Research Institute. So I would get the research from our statisticians and I would write the papers and like translate that data into something that would go into the journals. My CHCI experience was invaluable. While working on the office, you work a lot with constituents and you have a lot of interviews. Came very much in handy during medical school interviews. And you're more aware of how medicine and what you're trying to pursue fits into the public policy sector and how that role applies to things. So it was very easy to have these conversations during interviews. And I also had the experience of like, yes, medicine is something that I do want to pursue. And that's how I ultimately got to Davis. I am in my first year. I'm very fortunate. I really honestly think that my experience on the Hill led to my half ride to med school. So it was like something that I think, like, had I not had CHCI and had those experiences during interview, I don't think they would have given me that scholarship offer. And now, as a first year, I just organized the annual Latino, the National LMSA Policy Conference. We have a policy conference every year. I did that when I was a fellow too. And so we just organized our first virtual one in which we had med students from all over the states go and advocate on 3 specific issues. That was last weekend. And then we had a policy conference. So that's something that it still like ties back to my CHCI roots. And most recently, I was elected the AAMC liaison for my class. So again, very much into policy, and it's really an invaluable experience to see how much of what doctors do day to day gets affected by all those policies that are made and how much you can contribute to those policies with your background, whether it be in public health or what have you. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you, Marie, for stepping in. The beauties of technology and the loading, and you can't see what I see on this side of the screen. So Dominic, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you did with CHCI and what you're doing today.
Yeah, hi everyone, and thank you so much for letting me speak on the panel. I'm so excited. This was something I was really hoping to see back in 2018 when I was a congressional intern, like more outreach to STEM majors, because I just think it was such a valuable experience for me as a mechanical engineering major at the time. And I'm just so excited to see more engineering majors get involved with this wonderful program. But anyways, I am currently working for the Texas Democratic Party as the U.S. Senate data analyst. I'm on our data and analytics team. I work with the NJ Hagar campaign, who is currently the Democratic campaign, Democratic candidate working to unseat John Cornyn in the U.S. Senate. So I take care of any data needs they need, volunteer recruitment or reporting on how well they're doing with voter outreach and stuff like that. It varies day by day. And I also work with direct voter contact for the entire party. And so I'm helping strategically facilitate who we're talking to, making sure we're talking to the right people. We are getting them out to vote, getting the right people out to vote. So it's really exciting. I work 12-hour days every day, but it's really important work. And I am here because of my experience with CHCI. And to answer the question about, what impact, CHCI had on the trajectory of my professional career, very young professional career, I think the biggest impact is it just gave me a trajectory period. At the time in 2018, I had just wrapped up my associate's degree from San Antonio College in mechanical engineering. I was pretty lost. I was really unsure of where I fit in the world, not just professionally, but just kind of personally. And I found the flyer in my local study center, the Mesa Center at San Antonio College. And I just kind of applied on the whim because it said, all majors welcome. And I fit all majors. And so I thought that'd be perfect. And I came out of it, transformed. I consider it a transformative experience. I was fired up. Some of the projects I got to work on in the office of Joaquin Castro was just incredibly motivating and moving. That when I came back to San Antonio back in May, I immediately tried to hop on a congressional campaign. Don't recommend that. If you end up doing this, go back to school, finish your degree. But what I did is I came back and I decided to just work on a congressional campaign. It was 2018 election, the midterms. Beto O'Rourke was going against Ted Cruz. There was a lot of energy in Texas and I wanted to be a part of it. So I worked for a gentleman named Joseph Kopser here in my home district. He was running for Congress. Unfortunately, he didn't win, but that whole entire year, CHCI to Joseph Kopser campaign really set the stage and really gave me a trajectory in my career that I otherwise would not have had unless I just applied to CHCI. So for that, I'm eternally thankful and I'm really excited to hopefully provide that for some more people here. Thanks.
That's awesome. And we're all very excited that you're doing that work right now. So thanks, Dominic. Gabriela, if you can also introduce yourself and tell us a little bit, not only about CHCI and your experience here, but how did it get to where you are today?
Well, thank you, Yvette, and good evening to everyone. My experience was a little bit different. I was a graduate fellow. My interests are social and environmental justice. Those are the topics that fueled me. And when I applied to CHCI, I had already earned my master's, and it was in environmental science. And by that point, similar to what Lisbeth was talking about, is you would read a lot of publications and a lot of work during the master's program, and they would always end, 90% of publications will end with saying, how does this impact policy, or how can we change policies for the environment? And because environmental justice was such a driver of my interest in working on the environment, I always thought, I was like, well, who are these policymakers and what do they do and what do they look like? And so at the time I was in DC, when I heard about CHCI, somebody had come up to me and told me, hey, do you know of this program? I think you would be a really good fit. And so I started looking at the program and looking at the profiles of that time, the current fellows. And I said, oh, I can do this. And so that's what I hope those of you that are joining us in the call, you will go look through the profiles, because you will find out that you will have so many, maybe there's somebody there that you identify with, and you will be encouraged to apply. And because I saw that, I applied. And well, how did it impact my trajectory? After I finished CHCI, I came back to Texas because I am from Texas. I'm from South Texas, from Brownsville, and I completed my PhD in ecology at Texas A&M, and now I'm about to finish my postdoc, which I never thought I would do a postdoc. Like, it wasn't part of my plans. The PhD was, but not the postdoc. But the postdoc was actually very painless. I loved it. I really loved the postdoc. Similar to my undergraduate, the undergraduate was hard. The master's was really tough. The PhD, like, there's some degrees are harder than others, but the postdoc was a really enjoyable experience for me. And how did the Hill experience with CHCI impact my current work? Well, I'm currently teaching graduate level classes on environmental impact assessments. And I use all that information that Yvette was talking about on that. How does policy make that transition to academia? Well, I now get to teach others about environmental regulations that I learned while I was working on the Hill in the U.S. House Committee on Natural Resources. So it definitely did have an impact, because I probably would have not been considered for the position had I not had that Hill experience. So I'm willing to share more with you as we continue this conversation.
That's awesome. Thank you, Gabriela. So now I want to ask you a little bit more specific on, so what did you do day to day while you were with the CHCI program? So I'll go over now, do round robin again to Lisbeth. So I'm sure many of the students out there want to know, okay, so this all sounds good, but tell me on any given day, what did you really do that kind of helped you gain that experience?
Thank you, Yvette. So kind of how I mentioned before, within my portfolio in Harris's office, it was mostly healthcare, a little bit of education, some social and environmental issues, and social welfare programs. So any given day, how it would look like is that we would have a lot of constituent meetings. So let's say that someone wanted to meet on any of these topics. I would meet with them, hear their concerns, relay that information back to the senator, write a memo. Oftentimes than not, it was a lot of memo writing on voter recommendations. Should the senator vote yes or no on this specific law, or on a ruling that was coming up? Also, a lot of memos about, should she sign on to a certain bill? Should she sign on to a certain letter? Things like that. So a lot of writing, a lot of meetings. And then during my year, it was depending if the ACA was being attacked that day, then everything else was being dropped. And then it was a lot of getting top of mind information of, like, how do we defend the ACA today? What during my time, I think it was also when the Maria hurricane was going on. So a lot of work on health impacts about that, the opioid crisis. What can be done? What are some possible solutions? So trying to be reactive, but then also if there was enough time to carve out to be proactive of, like, what are salient problems going on in California, and what could be some cool ideas to fix them, and proposing memos that go up kind of like the chain of command of the office, and seeing what could be done. And all that would happen on any given day. So there was never a dull day. Definitely vouch for that.
Yep, thanks, Lisbeth. So that, I guess similar to what I was explaining, right, that none of these congressional men or women make decisions in a vacuum, right? They don't do all these things on their own. It's teams of people like yourself that are doing all the quick homework and the research for them on, the pros and cons on any specific topic or any specific area. And to me, that's a direct impact, right, of how your work can impact how a senator goes on the floor to vote for any piece of legislation one way or another. So I'll go now to Gabriela. So what?
Great. I'm glad you're asking me because I wanted to give a different spin to what Lisbeth answered. I'm going to give you more of the day to day. So the days were very long. So I'm from Texas and I'm from a small town. So the days go slow because there's not public transit in, South Texas. It's a small town, but DC is big. And to get anywhere, you need to make a plan how to get there because it's going to take you, 30 minutes, even if it's near you. And so I remember my day starting as early as possible, but I would not too early because I knew I was going to spend most of my day in DC or, at work. And I worked in a committee. And so the committee was different from a member's office because at a member's office, you're dealing just with legislation and you're basically organizing, other staffers so that they all can move legislation forward within their own offices. So it's a lot of management that you're doing on the staff. And I was dealing with a portfolio that was very specific to natural resources and looking at federal land. So I knew that I was going to spend a lot of time once I arrived to the office. But so I would get to the office and I would, be doing my regular work, but the day doesn't end at 5 o'clock, like at a regular job. Sometimes I'd have to stay there until 6, sometimes until 7. And I remember very clearly one day, I was told, can you stay a little bit later? And I was like, how much more? I'm like, I've been here all day. And they're like, well, it's because the congressman is going to go vote. And I couldn't make the connection at the time. Well, he wanted me to go with him to the floor to vote. And that was a very meaningful personal experience to be able to actually have been there when a vote was being cast, because it was so, all of the work that I had done, now it actually it all ends up with, one vote and all of this democracy at work. And so that's the days are long. And then sometimes after work, then there's other things to do. There's other activities. You get invited by friends that you meet. They tell you, let's go have dinner. So you're on the go all the time. I would basically get home until 9:30, 10, and then I would start over again. And it was a marathon. It really was. And once I came back, I did take about a month off.
So to follow up on that, Gabriela, would you say that experience helped you make your career choices after? The busyness and really focused on the next thing on the next day. And
well, it taught me that I'm capable of more than I thought, right? So it let me know that I needed to be organized and manage my schedule, and that if you do want to accomplish things, you can, but you have to also take care of yourself in the process. And I found it to be very valuable. And now in academia, the days are busy too, right? And where I'm working, but maybe it did prepare me for this next stage in my career. And I'm even more busy now than before, which I don't know how that happens, but I'm very busy today too.
Good. And Dominic, from your perspective, right? So you're the one on the panel that went through our internship program. So a little bit different, but how did your day-to-day look?
Yeah, a lot different. I think some of the work that Elizabeth and Gabriela were doing is incredible, and I wish I could have done similar things. But the things you do get to do as an intern, depending on the office, can be maybe not as consequential, but still very exciting and very, you really feel like you're part of the team. Day to day, you are doing some standard intern work. You're answering phones from angry constituents, which can paint a different light of your home district if you're like me and coming from San Antonio and working for a San Antonio congressman. So that was really interesting. But sometimes you get to do some really, really cool work with some of the legislative staff, sitting in on meetings with lobbyists as they talk about their legislative proposals. That was really exciting, and to be a part of that as an intern, just to listen in, even if you're not actively contributing to the meeting, I think that's just an incredible experience that you don't get to really get anywhere else. Another really consequential and something I still really appreciate to this day, were being able to go to like committee hearings and being able to go to hearings put on by like maybe interest groups. And those are really exciting because sometimes some of those hearings can be like the genesis of like future legislation. Not always, but they can. And to think that like, you know, this is where it starts, this is where policy starts, these are where all these like fancy name bills come from, that's really incredible. And being able to be the person that your office depends on to, you know, consolidate, synthesize the information you get from those hearings and provide it to the rest of your staff, that's also really empowering, to feel like they're depending on you and you're definitely just a part of the team. So even if, you know, you're not as consequential as maybe some of the fellows, there are a lot of opportunities and things that have really contributed to the rest of my career and that I'm really appreciative of.
So I actually have a follow-up question for you, Dominic, and so for the ladies. Relative to that, how much did you know about policy before you came on to CHCI? Did you know the word policy? Did you do anything in schoolwork related to it? And how did you figure out how to navigate the overall process?
Yeah, so the extent of my governmental policy knowledge was probably like my government class, my single US government class at community college. That was pretty much it. But that was kind of the reason why I wanted to do the CHCI, to kind of expand myself, kind of challenge myself to see, you know, am I capable of doing this? What am I gonna look like after, you know, this 3.5 months with CHCI? What information and knowledge am I gonna gain? And it turns out it's quite a lot. So yeah, I didn't know too much, but when you're in the office, like, you pay attention because there's just a lot of information that can be soaked up, and it was an incredible experience and I'm glad I did it.
So same question for you, Lisbeth. How much did you know of policy, and was it of any interest, or did you just kind of fall into it? And what happened in the course of your 9-month fellowship?
I just kind of fell into it. So when I did my MPH at GW, my concentration was in global health policy. So I did intern and I did my thesis with the World Health Organization, WHO, PAHO. So more like focused on Latin America and like global health systems, nothing to do with Congress or like how our government works. And so a friend of mine showed me the CHCI opportunity for the graduate health fellow. I applied. I'm like, oh, it seems interesting. I mean, hopefully they might take me. And then I think it was definitely a trial by fire. There's so much to learn once you're in the office, and CHCI does a good job of like onboarding us of like, this is how a bill becomes a law. And then there's this orientation of like trying to get everyone situated with a baseline knowledge of like, this is what you should know coming in. But I think it's one of those unique positions where you learn so much on the day-to-day that no class could prepare you for the culture or just what happens and how much like life and policy affects your day-to-day job. So it was a very unique experience, and I think it definitely prepared me for med school. I think if anything, it's one of the most experiences that I could correlate to med school, because you know, the days are hard and it's long and you have to know a lot of things, and there's very little room for error. And so I think like the same hill expectations apply very much to med school. It's just actually kind of funny how they're both very similar.
Yeah.
Well, I had a little bit of policy experience. I had worked for a federal agency I'd worked there for a year, and my title had been policy analyst. which was odd because I never considered myself a policy analyst, but that was the title I was given when I started working there, because my job was to review internal agency policy for a land management federal agency. But I didn't have like that bigger view that I was able to get once I worked on the Hill. And I remember very clearly that when I was working in that role as a policy analyst, I was thinking, who's writing this, and who are these individuals? And I feel very fortunate that I ended up being able to work with, at least meet and know who they were, because that was such a huge disconnect. Like, no one in my family had ever worked on the Hill. I don't think I had any friends that had ever worked on the Hill. And now most of my friends, my current friends, most of them have, because most of my friends came from the CHCI program. And so I had not had, direct, like I had not been exposed to that. I had environmental policy classes, but that was in the classroom. It wasn't in real life.
Yvette, you're on mute.
Before I go on to maybe one or two last questions I have for the team, I just want to make sure that if you have any questions out there that you want to ask the panelists directly, please make sure that you put it into the Q&A or to the chat box, and we will make sure that we get to it. Oh, we do have one. So I will ask this one now. It's from Jonathan Moreno, and he asks, given what was said earlier about long days, is a 32-hour work week average given in the website accurate, or is a lot more than that? And this may be a question for Marie and for everybody, actually. Considering the internship program, but would still be taking 2 remote classes. Did any of you experience that? Did any of you go through classes or?
Well, let me actually answer that, because depending on when they went through, some of our policies have changed over the years. So we do not recommend that folks take classes while participating in the internship or the fellowship. Definitely not the fellowship, but not the internship either. And primarily that's because that 32 hours a week that we're talking about that you'd be working, that's at your placement. And then you also have a full day of programming with CHCI on the additional days. So it is truly a full-time experience. It's not like a couple of hours, so I know when I was in school, like sometimes people were doing internships like, oh, like I have free time on Monday and Wednesday mornings, so that's when I do my internship. This is definitely like a full-time experience. So especially in the internship space, if certainly if you can find a way to get course credit for doing the internship, we'll work with you. So sometimes folks will just take like a practicum or maybe one class to maintain some kind of status or stay on track. That's totally, we'll work with you on that, but more than one class or more than just getting credit is usually not recommended. And you can ask folks who did it, they hated it. It's just not, it's just a really, really, really tough go. So definitely not recommended. And we do kind of reserve the right to draw the line and say, the course load that you're showing us, you can't do the program, so you have to choose. So just to throw that.
Yeah, thanks, Marie. And everyone agrees with you, because all the nodding when you said no, not recommended. They all kind of opened their eyes and said, yeah, no. But that brings me to maybe the last question for all 3 panelists, which is totally unrelated to your work. What other things did you do? What memorable or what one fun or memorable thing can you share with the team here on while you were in DC with CHCI? So we have other events, obviously, right? There are special events that the organization puts together. You are invited to different networking opportunities. You have what we call cafecitos with different people, and you get to meet a whole lot of people while you're going through the program with us. So for each of you, and I will start with Gabriela, for each of you, is there one maybe event, one instance, one person? What was one fun, memorable moment for you from the program?
I'm gonna share with you. So early in the process, or in my fellowship, I was gonna be there 9 months. The Pope came to DC, and it was something that I never thought I was gonna be able to see a Pope, because I had not, planned to go to Rome, and so I invited my sister. She came up, she got to see kind of what I did in DC, and then we also had that opportunity. And, it was something that because I was working on the Hill, and it was held for a lot of members of Congress were invited. I was able to go. That was very memorable, but also just in general, if you're thinking about this as an opportunity for you, the connections that you're going to make every day, sometimes the people that you're going to meet on the metro, you might not even know that you end up collaborating with them because you're all going to the same places, and you start meeting. DC is it's a very small place. It's just some people that are always coming and going, and there's some very interesting people that may have the same objectives and goals that you have. So if you're even considering applying for this, for the internship or the fellowship program, really reach out to former fellows and interns, because you might find that it could be a good fit for you as well.
Thanks, Gabriela. And now I'll go to Dominic. A fun or memorable?
Sure. First, I actually kind of like two-ish sort of. The first like serious one, I got to be part of 2 really amazing marches. First was marching with Dreamers, because at the time, spring 2018, DACA was in the Supreme Court, and I got to march with the Dreamers in front of the Supreme Court, all the way to actually to the House building that I was working into. So that was really special to be a part of that and be a part of that march and that protest. And then another one was also being a part of the March for Life, the very first one in 2018, when at the time, I believe, I forget the school's name, but the school in Florida that had a mass shooting, the Parkland students, they had a huge march and protest in DC, and that was really special. I forget how many people. There's hundreds of thousands of people there, and I got to register voters at the march, at the parade, and that was incredible, and that was really moving to be a part of that. That really feels like grassroots, things that sometimes we can kind of lose in the hoity-toity high talk of like policy and stuff like that. But to be down there registering voters, that's really special, and that's something I'll hold dearly forever. And then I guess like one last silly one, I got to go to a happy hour party thing hosted by Toyota that was like Game of Thrones theme. That was incredible. I love that. It was like open bar and free food, and there were people dressed as like the Night Walkers, and you got to throw things at them. Really great. That's one of the cool perks of DC. There's like a bunch of happy hours you can go to, but I'll end it on the silly one.
Thanks, Dominic. And Lisbeth, for you.
I guess I'll follow up Dominic with like a serious one and a fun one. The serious one was I wrote a bill. I've introduced a bill, and so that was really memorable because I never thought I would write a bill, and it was on environmental justice and women of color, and so I had like I worked so hard on that thing, and I just remember I took a picture with like my colleagues of like me with the little bill in the state capitol when you hand it in and do the process. So it was like such a surreal experience of like, when in the world did I think I would do that? So that was really memorable. A really fun experience was that I went to see the DC premiere of the Black Panther with the CBC caucus. And so seeing Black Panther with like Maxine Waters and like all the members of the Congressional Black Caucus, like, hey, it's a great movie, but also just like with actual like life heroes who've done so much good work for social justice. That was really fun. And it was on Valentine's Day, so it was the best Valentine's Day I've ever had. But a quick note on think one of the like most memorable things that you really get out of CHCI, especially if you do the long fellowship, is the family that you've developed. Like my cohort, when I was interviewing around the country, I stayed with a lot of them because they truly become your family. It's very unique bonding experience in which you grow a lot, and so I think that's something that you have so many memories with them, and you really grow to have them as your.
Well, thanks, Beth. That's hard to top all that. So one of you does have a question that I will actually ask one of you, not all three of you, one of you can answer since we're right about time, but this is a good question for everybody who's interested in the program. And the question is, did you have to work on your own habits or of organization and timekeeping when you started working in your program? And anybody, whoever wants to go ahead and answer. Look at Dave. None of you jump at one time.
Okay, I'll answer because I struggled with this very much. So I had been in graduate school, or even if you're doing your undergraduate and you're doing graduate school, you have, basically it's your time. You get to, you study when you want to study, you go into class for, maybe 3 hours a day. So the rest of the time is your time. And so going to work in this setting, I had to make certain that I was preparing for the next day. So what I learned is like making like goals before I went to sleep the night before, be like, make certain that I don't miss that meeting at 3 o'clock the next day, because there's going to be a lot of new commitments or new responsibilities that you didn't have before. Also, if you're living in a house with roommates now, for a while, I had a lot of roommates, and, organizing schedules and making certain that, in the mornings you were able to get dressed and get out of the house on time. You're dealing with, not missing your bus or not missing your metro, because you don't want to be late. So I would do these like to-do lists the night before to keep myself, on time. And that's something that I had to learn in the process. And it was very critical because it's really, you just have to show up. A lot of the work is showing up and making certain that you're sitting in that table. Something else, someone else here asked, like, do you get to pick where you get placed? I don't know about interns, but fellows, you do interview. First, you'll get if you do get selected and you are, a candidate, you will interview with the staffs, and they will let you know the culture of their staff. And so understanding the culture, when you're supposed to show up and when you're supposed to leave, you can ask somebody. You can say, should I be here at 9? Should I be here at 10? Like, every office works differently. So you just need to learn the culture of the office. But as you get there, time management will be critical, because it's not, you have to make a plan. And that's what I did. I would do these to-do lists. Sometimes I made it to all my to-dos. Sometimes I missed some, but at least I started creating that organization for myself.
Yeah, and just to clarify, Gabriella is correct. Our interns, we do ask, right? We make sure that we align folks with their party affiliation, because what we have found is that there was a golden era of the Hill where it didn't matter which party you worked for, as long as you're working on the Hill. Now it's very like, once you pick your path, that is your path, and no one from the other side is going to pay attention to you. So we'll work on things like that and trying to gauge kind of a little bit of political leanings. But for interns, many offices strongly prefer folks from in-district or from the same state, and aren't as open to taking folks from, totally different state, totally different area. So we'll work a little bit with folks, but mostly we'll place you directly in an office at the intern side. And on the fellowship side, we'll provide insight and guidance and the connections that we have. And yes, fellows will interview and gets to have some say in that. As long as they get offers, most of our fellows get a couple of different offers that they get to choose from in the process, but it's slightly different for each program. Sorry, I had to chime in on the program stuff. And then we had one last we have one last question quickly about how to stand out as an applicant for both programs. And I just, I think from my perspective, and actually I think at least a couple, I think Gabriella and Elizabeth at least have helped review applications. So you've been part of this process on the other side too. Dominic, I don't know if we roped you into that yet. But, for us, I think the things that make people stand out within their applications are, aside from the obvious things like proofreading and getting people to review your essays and make sure they make sense and you aren't, didn't copy and paste half of the wrong thing. Aside from those obvious things, I think really just making sure that you're representing yourself and who you are and what you're passionate about and what drives you. I think a lot of people will come to our programs and think, oh, it's a Latino organization, I should probably just talk about immigration, right? Like that's what I should write an essay on. And really we want to know what drives you. Like what are you passionate about? What knowledge do you bring to the table? What curiosities do you have? Where do you want to take this? So intentionality, I think, is a really big thing that we're looking for, is like, what are you really looking to get out of it? And what are you going to bring, right, to the mix? Because to Lizbeth's point, we really work hard on trying to pull together a cohort, not necessarily of best friends, right? Like we want cohorts to learn from each other and challenge each other and grow from each other. So we're definitely not looking for people who are all going to just, what fun is a conversation in programming if everybody just agrees? Like, that's not very fun. So we'll definitely be looking for that. But we are looking for people who are going to complement each other, right? So if we've got, on the one hand, a person with a strong health background, let's bring somebody with a different focus area to kind of complement that and bring a lot of different voices to the table, whether that be from parts of the country, gender identity, your Hispanic heritage, where you or your family are from. All of those things kind of add up to bringing together a cohort that's going to help each other learn and grow and support. So those are all some things on our end, I think, that can help you stand out.
So with that, Marie, the only last thing I would like to say is to thank all of our panelists. I think they're wonderful. You can clearly see why they were selected when they were selected. And it's awesome to see where they're at today after their program. So I thank you all for being patient with me and my technology hiccups along the way. And I will pass it over to Marie for any last things.
So just a couple, for those of you who are interested in potentially applying to a CHCI program, our program application deadlines are here. All of our programs for the internship, all of the application fellows and interns currently live. Spring 2021 deadline just passed yesterday. Applications are still open for summer 2021 and fall 2021. And the applications just launched last week for our fellowship programs for 2021. So definitely encourage you to check out our website for more information and to access the applications. And, if you've got any siblings, cousins, friends who are in high school and want to participate in a fantastic high school leadership program, that application will be launching tomorrow. I can't believe we're already at the 15th. It'll be launching tomorrow, and those applications will be available as well. So definitely check those out. And as I mentioned before, if you are interested in any of our policy contents, some of the conversations that we convene with leaders in these different areas, we'll have a health summit coming up on November 17th and 18th, and our tech summit will be on December 8th. And so announcements for registration for both of those should be coming out very soon. So if you haven't already signed up for our email list, be sure to do so on our website. But with that, thank you to all of our fantastic panelists. Really appreciate your time. Thank you, Yvette, for helping steer this conversation. And, as I mentioned before, this recording will be live on our website probably within the next day or two by the end of the week. We have a couple other webinars coming up. So for those of you who are asking some questions about interns versus fellows, we have a session coming up on that, I believe in November, and then a session on our fellowship programs in December. So feel free to come on back. We've got more for you. But thank you so much, everyone. Have a great night and stay safe with everything going on. And don't forget to vote.